Good afternoon, scholars. I am back at Northeast Middle School. I apologize for the delay in getting today's lesson ready. Aside from doing my homework at Union, I have been on the chase for the White Witch again, and I have chased her to a swamp. I saw her turn a squirrel into stone, and apparently Aslan must be in the Jackson area because the squirrel turned back into a squirrel, and I attempted to interview him, and I'll share all that footage with you. What disturbs me most, though, is that she was back here at Northeast Middle School again, at the entrance to our portables. You can see the back entrance to the school here. You have been in and out of it many times, but what concerns me is that she had her reindeer here, and you can see their tracks left on the door there. The snow prints are still there. And I was able to open the door and get into the school. I'm going to give you a peek inside the school here. And she took off down that hall when I got here. I think she may be in the library. But I saw something else disturbing too that I want to share with you. This is the back door to Miss Prather's classroom, and you see a cooler there. It appears that the White Witch and her elves were having a picnic here at Northeast Middle School, and they left her cooler behind. I'm very concerned about her level of activity here at Northeast. I thought we were a witch-free school, but she appears to be wreaking havoc here at Northeast. Good morning, scholars. The White Witch appears to have retreated into the swamp. Right behind me, I saw her on a kayak just a few minutes ago. Let me give you a better look. As you can see, there is quite a swampy swamp here, and I tracked her down to this area. This seems to be more of her type of habitat, and her kayak went right through there. I don't think I'm going to go after her today because I don't really want to wade through there with the snakes, but maybe we're done with her. We'll see. Well, here's a squirrel we can talk to. Mr. Squirrel, did you get turned to stone? Do you know the squirrels who did? Can you tell us anything? Nothing at all. What are you eating? Okay, well, you're no help. What kind of tree is that?
It's a stone tree.
Well, you're not going to talk. I guess we'll leave you alone. Here is the most important scene of all in the entire book and movie. Watch it closely, and then I will share my thoughts about it and my own experience as a reader and as a watcher.
They're gone. Shouldn't we be getting back to camp? If there's going to be trouble, we can't just leave them lying there. Oh, my legs are almost giving way. I feel so tired. Well, we have been up all night. Care Paravel. Do you suppose we'll ever reach it? They're doing something worse to him! Come on! What's happened? They might have left his body alone. But who has done it? What is it? Magic.
Yes, more magic.
Aslan! Oh, Aslan! You're not dead, Aslan! You're not a...
Do I look like it?
Oh, you're real! You're real! Aslan! Aslan!
Scholars, it looks like we have finally reached the climax of this story. The climax is where the tension or action reaches its highest place. And the most important part of this story is when Aslan comes back to life. Now, we have learned that in an allegory, most of the characters and objects are symbols of other things. For example, Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe represents Christ. The White Witch represents Satan or evil. And perhaps the four children represent Jesus' disciples. The chapter that we have just read is full of events that symbolize other events from the account of Jesus' resurrection or coming back to life in the Bible. Now, to help us learn how allegory works, let's identify just a few of them. Now, I don't know with absolute certainty that these are correct comparisons, but I really think they are. So let's look at the first one. On page 85, we read, "That's what I thought," said Lucy. "I think they're friendly mice." And at last, one by one, the ropes were all gnawed through. This is the scene where the mice show up and they don't like mice, but then they realize they're good mice and they chew the ropes off of Aslan. The girls cleared away the remains of the gnawed ropes. Aslan looked more like himself without them. Every moment his dead face looked nobler as the light grew and they could see it better. Perhaps that represents this account in the book of Matthew. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Now, they probably didn't trust the rich people, and they didn't trust the Sanhedrin, and I believe he was affiliated with them as well. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. In both accounts, we have the dead body of our hero. We have women looking on who are very sad, and we have a very unlikely person coming onto the scene to help. In the first account, it is mice. Mice are a very unliked creature, the last creature that you would expect to come to the rescue. In the second passage, it is a rich man who I believe is also affiliated with the Sanhedrin, the religious elite, who were not trusted at this point. And so we see a lot of similarities between the two passages. Here's another example. On page 86, we read, "They walked to and fro more times than they could count between the dead Aslan and the eastern ridge, trying to keep warm, and oh, how tired their legs felt." That sounds very similar to this passage found in the book of Matthew in the Bible. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. In both cases, we have female characters walking early in the morning to check on the body of our dead hero. Here's one more similarity. We read this on page 86. "The stone table was broken into two pieces by a great crack that ran down it from end to end, and there was no Aslan." That sounds very similar to this account in the book of Matthew. Now, I've left out some verses that don't relate. That sounds very similar to this account from the book of Matthew. Now, I have skipped a couple of verses, but that is not to take things out of context. That is to put just the verses that directly tie to the first passage. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." That sounds very similar to this account in the book of Matthew. Now, I've left out some verses that don't relate. That sounds very similar to this account from the book of Matthew. Now, I have skipped a couple of verses, but that is not to take things out of context. That is to put just the verses that directly tie to the first passage. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." In both cases, we have female characters again coming to the place where the dead body supposedly is. In both cases, we have violent sounds or violent weather, and in both cases, the rock is overcome. In the first passage, it's a stone tablet that's broken in two. In the second passage, it's a giant stone that is rolled away. And in both cases, the body of the hero, which they're seeking, is gone. Reading an allegory is all about picking out the symbols and similarities. As you are reading an allegory, always remind yourself that the characters and objects represent other things. Now it's your turn. I've identified 3 for you, and your reading assignment for today is from the Holy Bible, New International Version. It's Luke chapter 26. Reading an allegory is all about picking out the symbols and similarities. As you are reading an allegory, always remind yourself that the characters and objects actually represent other things. So now it's your turn. I've shown you 3 similarities, and your reading assignment today is Luke chapter 23, verse 26 through chapter 24, verse 12 from the Holy Bible. Now, there is a PDF of the passage linked on our site, so you don't have to pick up your own Bible to read it. Identify one passage from chapter 15 in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that represents something in today's reading passage from the Bible. So I've shown you 3, so you kind of know what you're looking for now. Use 2 to 3 proper and complete sentences to tell me what it represents in the reading passage from Luke in the Bible. Email your response to gekelley@jmcss.org for the shout out. I looked at all of your answers in which you responded yes or no. Did you see Aslan's coming back to life coming as you read the story? And I can relate to most of you. I'm reading the book for the first time with you. I looked at your yes or no statements, which are now posted to the website, where you answered the question, did you see it coming about Aslan coming back to life? And I want to address that just for a moment and give a little feedback for you and a little advice for future reading of allegories. So we'll wrap up with that. When it comes to this story, I am like most of you. I am reading the book along with you for the first time, but I have seen the movie before, so I want to speak to this climactic scene from that viewpoint. When I first saw the movie, I did not realize that it was an allegory of the life of Christ. In other words, the characters in the book and the movie symbolize characters and aspects of the life of Christ. And so with Aslan being the character that symbolizes Christ, it was only fitting that he would rise from the dead, since we read in Scripture that Christ rose from the dead. But I didn't realize it was an allegory when I first saw it, so it was total surprise to me when Aslan came back to life. I want to teach you a trick based on what we've just seen with this allegory. For those of you who knew that it was an allegory about the life of Christ, you were not surprised when Aslan came back to life. In fact, you expected it and you could have predicted it ahead of time. So in the future, when you are reading a story and your teacher says that this is an allegory of blah, blah, blah story, go back and research that story, see how it comes out, and you'll be able to predict the outcome of the allegory. You'll come across as highly intelligent using that little trick. So try that next time.